class, you prepped your slabs, and they should all be leather hard. A way to test that is once you hold them up, if you kind of wiggle it, it really shouldn't move very much. It will move if you put a lot of pressure on it, but if you just sort of wiggle it, it holds its shape. So what you need to do now that they're all leather hard is cut them down to be the exact size. So once you cut all of your slabs, in order for them to attach together, we need to actually bevel the edges. So using a bevel tool, you're going to create a 45-degree angle so that these tuck up right next to each other. So the bevel tool has a side that looks like a square, half a square. It's this side that you want to use, and you're going to line it up right next to the edge of your slab, and you're going to run it across. So flat on the table, I want to make sure if I have texture on there, that the texture side is down, and I'm going to bevel the inside, or what will be the inside walls, by running the bevel tool along the edge. I want to do this to every single one of my slabs. If you don't have a texture on there already, then it doesn't really matter what side you bevel. Because remember, you have to have texture on there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be impressed. You could do additive texture, and I recommend adding your textures once you've constructed your box. So you'll know if your slabs are still too soft, because when you bevel it, you'll get fingerprints in there. But see how I can cut a nice clean line? So this really shows me that they're a nice consistency. Once I beveled all of my slabs, I'm going to take a scoring tool and I'm going to run along the edges of every single slab. I don't just want to bevel the edge, but I want to go a little bit above the top as well. This will be helpful for when I add my reinforcing coils. I won't need to score the area again. So I'm on the last one. Just remember to go over that edge slightly. Now I'm ready to start putting these boxes together. And notice how the beveled edge creates a nice 90-degree angle where those line up exactly. I like to have some paper underneath whenever I work on the table if I'm adding slip so that it doesn't stick to the table. And I'm going to use slip on both the edges, and I want to carefully squeeze those together. But what I've found is if you use your hand on the back, it can kind of create finger marks. So you can use either a ruler and push on the side, or you can use a wood paddle. That just creates a nice edge. So wherever you have a joint, you want to add a reinforcing coil. You want to use fresh clay, and you don't want the coil to be any thicker than a pencil, because the thicker it is, the more you have to blend. Because I already have my score marks there, I'm just going to run some slip along the edge. I'm going to place the coil, and I just sort of squeeze that in a little bit, and then I'm going to blend the coil in with my finger and tear off the excess. I'm going to do this for every single joint. This last joint on the inside can be a little bit tricky. So if you can't really get your hands in, you want to use a wood modeling tool to kind of help you guide that coil into the edge. You can also use the wood modeling tool to blend it, or if you can get your hand in there, you can just press the clay down with your fingers. All right, once you have the very last piece to go on, you are going to attach it. So everybody is going to attach the top of their box, and everybody is going to then cut out using curved or angular lines. Make sure you're writing that down. So before I cut the lid off, I like to take a minute to just kind of smooth all of my edges. Keep in mind that anywhere I've added slip, those joints are going to be very soft. So once you kind of smooth everything out, you might want to wait a little minute for it to sort of firm back up. Once I've ensured that all of my joints are nice and smooth, I've taken the time to really consider craftsmanship. I'm kind of going back through and I'm making sure everything looks nice and neat. I can decide to cut my box. So I think I want this side for the top. So I'm just going to draw the mark before I cut it. And don't forget, you need to have either curved lines or angular lines, because then it kind of helps to know what direction the lid should go. And I'd recommend cutting at least ½ inch below the top of the box, as you have a ¼ inch like edge, so you just don't want to be cutting into that. You want to clear it. So I'm just going to kind of draw mine first, make sure I like it. Notice how I have some clear angles in here, so I know which direction that the lid should go. Then I'm going to check out an X-Acto and carefully cut this lid off. So my box is still pretty soft. I'd recommend maybe waiting for yours to kind of firm up. But once you cut it off, you need to identify where you still have those joints that do not have reinforcing coils, and you're going to add those reinforcing coils to it. And one of my joints just so happened that it was in the lid, so I still need to reinforce that. Alright, what do you notice about all of these lip rims? They're still kind of jagged or sharp, so you want to just kind of gently run your finger over them, not changing too much of the shape, but just remove any of those sharp lines. We don't necessarily need them rounded like the lip rim of a mug, but we just don't want them to be sharp after they're fired. So I'm just going to soften all of that. Same thing on the lid. I want to make sure that my lid still fits. Okay, so this is not the end. Once I've done this, to stop it from kind of sliding around, because it still will do that even with these angles, you need to add a flange. So I recommend using one of your extra slabs or using some of the cutoffs from your slabs from before. And you just want to cut some strips of slab. Now you could do this with a coil, but I found that the slab is just easier. And I like to just cut the width of a ruler. It just kind of keeps it easy for me. And what you need to do is measure so that these slabs fit inside of the container. So you can kind of eyeball it, but notice how once I have the slab on there, it creates a little edge. This edge or this flange is going to be what stops it from kind of flailing around, from moving around. Now can I just place these in here? No, I'm going to need to score and slip them on, otherwise they're going to fall out. So now those are all placed, I'm just going to score and slip them on. Just running your brush, your damp brush, kind of over to remove any extra score marks. Really make sure that's all secure on there. And now you have a flange that will help ensure that your box stays secure. So I'm just kind of having to wiggle things around because they got moved a little bit. So now I have a secure lid for my box that now when I jiggle it, it doesn't move. That's not the end though. You need to make sure to add your sculptural handle. Something I want you to keep in mind when making your sculptural handle is it needs to look good in the round. If I wanted to turn this box into like a nature theme in which I had a fluffy cloud on the top with some raindrops, I would need to make sure that I don't just cut out a slab. If I did this and stuck it on, that is not very interesting in the round. It goes flat on the sides. So I would need to build out a three-dimensional cloud. So if I decided to build out a cloud like this, something I need to keep in mind though is if it's thicker than your thumb underneath, you're going to need to hollow it out before you attach it on. I can just use a ribbon tool and just hollow out the excess. So as long as no one area is thicker than my thumb, this will be just fine. And I could place that on my box. Notice the difference? If I had this cloud and I decided to cut out some raindrops, that's far less interesting than if I have a three-dimensional cloud with three-dimensional raindrops. So I might decide to put a little face on my cloud. I can use the different tools for that. I kind of like the end of this brush for the eyes. Then I might want to make a little sad face. Please do not use needle tools for carving. You can use the dental tools. Once you've carved with the dental tool, you still need to come back in with a rubber tip tool and refine that. You might find that it still has some boogers that you will refine once it's leather hard, and I think I want a smaller face for that. Let's see, I'm going to put smaller mouth. Alright, so I've got my little rain cloud, and I'm going to have to slip and score anything I attach on. So if I have all these little raindrops, maybe I want raindrops coming down the side. But what do I need to keep in mind? If I've got trapped air in here, I don't just slip and score this on. What do I need to do? Yeah, I need to poke a hole somewhere. So I can either poke a hole through the lid this way before I slip and score it on, or I could poke a hole into the actual sculptural handle itself. Then I have a sculptural handle that's in the round. Do not forget to put your initials and period on the bottom clearly. You're going to check this off with me before you turn it into the card.